And welcome back. This video continuing to work on the fuel tanks, as you can see here. This is I believe this is the left fuel tank. Going to be getting ready to start putting the frame portions of this together and doing all the prep work for the interior of the tank. This video is going to be mostly getting the J stiffener drilled into place, as you see in my hand there, and then working on the back plate and getting the skins ready for the back plate. The back plate is going to be one of the very last things you do, obviously, but you still have some prep work to do. So speaking of the J stiffener, that's the hole that the instructions had you drill in place first before you drew the center line. And now I'm looking through the skin holes to find that center line that I drew and final size a number 40 hole. And this is where I said as I go along, I'm positioning and moving the J stiffener so that I can align that line in the middle of the holes there, so try to make it as straight as you can. And I'm using every hole is getting a Cleco just to hold it in place. Like I said, it has a slight bend. The J stiffener has a slight bend to it, a curve along its length. So I wanted to make sure that I held it in place. And then through the magic of editing, I kind of went through and cut out a good portion of it, of the redundancy of it. Anyway, so you get the J stiffener ready, and you want to make sure you look at the orientation of it. That you'll see me going back and forth to the instructions in the first diagram there, just to make sure I'm looking at the orientation of all the pieces right, and I'm understanding how everything's supposed to be put together. So here's the back piece, the back plate, and basically you're just gonna you're going to Cleco this in place, and you're using it basically as a back pressure for the countersinking you're about to do. So I put in about every fourth Cleco or so, and then the instructions tell you to not countersink every 10th hole. Reason being, that allows you to have a good point of contact when you go to Cleco the plate in place at the end of the construction, and have it sit in place accurately. So then it'll have you put in the rivets of the holes that are already countersunk, and then once that's done, pull out the Clecos and then countersink those last remaining 20 holes, 10 per side, and then rivet those as well. The instructions, a lot of the times the instructions will tell you just final drill all size 40 holes, or final drill all holes in accordance with figure 1 on page whatever. So you really got to pay attention to make sure that you're looking at the right thing, and that you're confident in which holes you're supposed to drill, and that you get all of them. I think I had initially forgotten about the fuel cap area and forgot to final size those to a size 40. So just make sure you're looking at the instructions and looking at the diagrams and getting all of the holes that are intended to be final sized. And I believe this one had 3 different sizes. I think it has the number 40 obviously, but I think it was the number 12 for where it attaches to the wing frame, and then I think it was a number 30, if I recall correctly, for some of the others where it attaches elsewhere. But just make sure you're looking at the diagram, looking at the instructions, and paying attention to which holes, what hole size you're drilling out. So this is countersinking those holes. Like I said, it's every 10th hole is left alone, and I just take painter's tape and cover those just to make sure I don't accidentally get those. And then you shift everything over and you countersink the holes that were blocked by the Clecos. Now the stands that I'm using, those were cut out of the boards on the shipping containers. The Vans draws them out for you for a template. The very similar to the horizontal stabilizer in that they're not intended to necessarily shape the piece for you. so you don't have to worry about them being entirely accurate. I can tell you these definitely did not help shape, other than to kind of squeeze the pieces together when I was putting the frames in, the ribs. But they're definitely not, as you can see there's a gap there at the top of the stand that's closest to the camera here. They're intended just to be a general support, not a shaping tool, so don't have to worry about being entirely accurate. I was going to include the film portion of constructing those, but it just took up too much time, and they're pretty self-explanatory. There wasn't anything special. So here I'm deburring the J stiffener. That's one thing you want to make sure, especially with the fuel tanks, is you go through and deburr everything. This more than anything else, in my mind, is extremely important to make sure you get all of the seating surfaces done right. That way you minimize the chances of leaks later on. And from what I understand, it's one of those things where if you do develop a leak, it is a pain in the butt to try to fix, because you have to completely undo just about everything you do here. And this sealant is not fun to mess with, especially once it's set. So just make sure you're going through and you're doing all of your normal practices of, good deburring practices, things like that. And then really pay attention to your rivets as you're setting them to make sure that they're set correctly. So these are the holes that I'm final sizing. I believe this is size 12. But final sizing all of these to, these are going to be the screw attach points onto the rest of the wing frame. So they will eventually, you will dimple all of these, I believe, and then there'll be attach points for nut plates into the wing to screw everything in place and hold the fuel tanks in place. And again, for those who aren't as familiar with vans, the fuel tanks are a wet tank, so meaning that instead of a bladder on the inside of the tank, the fuel sits directly against the metal, the frame of the fuel tank. So you really have to make sure that you're paying attention and that you're getting the sealant done well so that it doesn't allow any fuel to leak. So to go along with everything, there are metal pieces that go laterally in between the ribs, and it just helps distribute the weight from the center of the skins there to the ribs for structural support. So what you see me doing here is, it's called breaking the edges of the skins. Basically, you're folding the skins inward towards the next piece of skins, and that just helps prevent any pillowing, and it keeps the lines looking smooth. So I'm going to go ahead and leave this here, let this run out. For those who continue to watch these videos, I appreciate it. If you get a chance, hit that like button for me, and we'll see you guys next time around.